So let's talk about how we find the Erector Spinae. So within the Erector Spinae muscle group, as we learned in the short anatomy video on the Erector Spinae, there are three different muscle lines. Iliocostalis, which is our most lateral, longissimus, which is in the middle, and spinalis, which is closest to the spine. So in finding those muscles, let's talk about iliocostalis first. Iliocostalis, right? Ilio being iliac crest, costalis being ribs. Now we're focused in this particular video on the Erector Spinae of the lumbar area and the thoracic area. Let's say the full thoracic area, but I'm mostly focused on the lower thoracic, okay? So iliocostalis begins at the iliac crest. So again, if we find that iliac crest by tracing the hip, we come right to the top of the bone, so we're on the superior edge of the bone. The muscle is going to originate from the posterior aspect of the iliac crest. As it comes up, it's then going to digitate onto each rib as it comes up. So all the way up to the top of the rib cage before inserting into the lower portion of the cervical vertebrae. So again, it's going to originate on the posterior aspect of the iliac crest. Then it's going to digitate, which means fibers are going to come off of it in order to attach to each rib as it comes up. So this is the line of the muscle. It's going to come right here along that medial edge of the scapula, all along the rib cage, and insert in the lower cervical vertebrae. Longissimus is the middle muscle within the Erector Spinae group. And it actually is going to come from the posterior sacrum. So it's the only one of the Erector Spinae that attaches to the posterior sacrum. So it's coming all the way down to the bottom of the sacrum. That's its first attachment. That's its origin. And then that muscle is going to travel up, attaching to both the spinous and the transverse processes of every vertebrae as it comes all the way up through the thoracic spine into the cervical vertebrae, into the neck. We'll talk further about the cervical erectors in another video. Finally, spinalis. Spinalis originates higher, actually. It originates somewhere between T11 and L2. And it's really going to hug the spine, again attaching to all of the spinous and all of the transverse processes as it comes all the way up through the thoracic spine and into the cervical vertebrae and eventually into the head. So actions for these muscles are going to do extension of the back, so it moves us into a back bend, okay? They're going to do lateral flexion of the trunk. And they're also going to do same side rotation. So if we're working her right side, we would rotate to the right. Okay, so that's collective actions for all three of those muscles. Remember that those muscles are also housed between the posterior and middle layer of the thoracolumbar fascia. So you might want to look at that video as well. Now we're going to lay Jen down on the table. We're going to look at these muscles from a different aspect. So we know that the erectors form a muscle group that comes all the way up like this. They start from what's called the erector aponeurosis here on the posterior sacrum. So way down low on the posterior sacrum, you have an aponeurosis. And an aponeurosis, again, is a broad, flattened tendon. That aponeurosis attaches to the bottom sacral vertebrae, posterior aspect of, say, S4 and S5. From there is going to stem longissimus as it comes up along the posterior aspect of the sacrum. As we get to the top of the hip bone, we're also going to pick up iliocostalis as it comes up into the rib cage, and spinalis as we get to the top of the lumbar vertebrae. And then these muscles kind of form a group as they come all the way up to the top of the thoracic spine. Now they do move into the cervical spine as well, and 2 out of the 3 attach to the head. And we'll talk about that in another video. But if you think about that, that means that from here, the erector aponeurosis down near S4 and S5 is actually connecting all of the sacrum to the hip bones, to the rib cage, through the rib cage, all the way up the spine as well, all the spinous processes and the transverse processes. It's connecting everything all the way through the thoracic spine, into the cervical vertebrae, and then all the way up into the head. So this muscle line literally connects the sacrum to the head.